Hi, I'm Laura Wilson and I'm an artist, and today I'm going to be using my ongoing artwork, Trained on Vida, as a point of departure to explore collective memory, embodied knowledge, and the passing on of traditions, recipes, and gestures within the broader context of my practice. This builds on work that I've made around the production of bread, yeast, and dough, and my ongoing interest in how knowledge is passed from one person to another. Through Trained on Vida, I have been revisiting the original recipe of Vida Bread, a dark brown malted loaf which was once popular all across the UK in the early part of the 20th century, particularly for its long shelf life and digestive qualities. It is now only available in Northern Ireland, which is where I'm from, and I grew up eating it. Over the last few years, I've been developing a version of the bread with a baker called Mark Darville here in London, and we are now sharing our recipe through a network of local bakeries and galleries across the UK. Today I'm going to be joined by chef Irem Aksu, and together we're going to cook a recipe which is inspired by Vida Bread, which brings together our respective heritages of Northern Irish and Turkish. I'll also be joined by my former collaborators, Dr. Melanie Giles'a, who's an archaeologist, and Lucy Suggate, who's a dance artist and choreographer.
So we're gonna do a dish which is maybe even older than Vida Bread. But when we talked about to create something, taking the Vida Bread in the center of it, I immediately thought about that sauce. It's a garlic bread sauce simply, and it's coming from like centuries ago. It's also known like a poor man's sauce, we can say.
And it's called tarator.
Tarator. I know some Balkanian cuisines also has this, but in Istanbul tarator, if we're talking about Istanbul tarator, it's basically a bread and garlic sauce, but it's changed over the centuries and years. It's added like some nuts, like walnut is one of the popular version. Pistachios is a little bit expensive, posh version, and also almond, which will go really nice with this malted Vida bread together. Maybe we can start our lovely fish.
And this fish also swims in the Irish Sea.
And it's sustainably caught, one of the sustainably caught fishes in the UK, and I think one of the popular after cod and haddock, isn't it? So yeah, it's going to be hake, and then we're gonna do some garnishes with some red pepper, which is charred, and a samphire, which is in season as well. Lovely, it's nice, salty, and I think one of the best ingredients.
I think it's English, it's local.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the great things that goes with the seafood and fishes, it's important to dry the fish before we season it. Get rid of that. So I'm gonna put the skin up, a little bit olive oil. Pepper, and then a little bit of salt, both sides. It's important to give it on, season it both sides basically. So after season it well and coat it with olive oil nicely, salt, pepper, and I'm gonna do a little bed with some parsley, with some stalks of it.
Do you need any lemon?
Yes, we're gonna put some sliced lemon on top.
Shall I slice it for you?
Yeah, it would be great actually. So I'm gonna add a little bit samphire on top. And we've got lovely fresh herbs from your garden.
Yeah. Should I just put this on top?
Yes, please. And then I'm gonna put some...
2, 3, do you want an extra one?
I think 2 is plenty. Yeah, perfect. So I'm gonna add like final seasoning on top. Oh, and a little bit of butter to give it a nice pretty texture. So I'm gonna just put it underneath a little bit. and then some on top before it goes to oven. So it's pretty much like that. We're gonna leave it alone because once we actually wrap it up with the paper and then bake it, the fish keep its like moist texture and then absorbs all flavor afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's almost ready. I'm just gonna wrap it up and then we're gonna repeat exactly same thing, process for the other two flaps. So our oven is on. We're gonna put this.
And what temperature is the oven at?
It's usually 195 to 100. It depends how strong your oven is. Some of them vary. And this is fairly thick portion. We'll give it like 17 minutes and then check if it goes. So I'm gonna put this in
Let's
the
put
oven.
it in the oven.
Perfect.
So,
And then put the timer on. Perfect.
so now should we make the tarator sauce?
Yes, let's move on.
We're going to use some Vida bread.
Yeah.
Right? 2 slices.
2 slices of Vida Bread.
Yeah.
It's a basic garlic bread sauce, and it's often smells really delicious. I know I taste it. It's really nice, chewy, quite sweet, mild bread. I love it, and I think it's gonna go with almonds really nice together. That natural sweetness comes from the malted flour.
Yeah.
Flour.
So the malted flour is from Scotland.
Oh yes, exactly. But we're gonna use the flours here actually in the tempura mix as well. So in both dishes. So this sauce is often consumed one of the street food dishes, deep fried mussels and tarator sauce. Like a sandwich or just as it is eaten in Istanbul. But traditionally, if we go back like centuries ago, it used to be like one of these popular sauce, not necessarily a street food sauce, but it was going with the meat and fish dishes, of course.
Yeah.
But fish is one of the central things of the Istanbul cuisine. And its heritage. It's still strong, but it's kind of hard to preserve this collective memory. Fish population is getting low and low. The sea is tired of overfishing and the pollution.
Yeah.
But also the cultures, like the communities who were making this fish and seafood culture alive is getting less and less. I'm talking about Istanbul Greeks or Armenian people who mostly, used to cook fish and seafoods in their homes back in the day. So what we're going to do is...
We're going to put some water in this,
yes,
right?
we need to soak it a little bit in the water.
Just a little bit, right?
Yeah, we can break them up, soak it. Maybe you can add a little bit more, tiny bit. In the meantime, maybe 2 garlic cloves we're gonna put in. That I can actually clean this.
So it's just to kind of break it down. It's interesting because when this Vida bread in the early 1900s, that's when it was discovered by this guy called Robert Graham, who's seems from my research to be quite a kind of eccentric guy, but also quite forward-thinking for his time. And the bread became really popular across the UK. He was from Scotland, which is also a reason why I wanted to use this Scottish malted flour. Had these kind of unique properties, so it was really well digested within your body, but it also has a very long shelf life. And it's quite interesting actually just doing this as a kind of action, because when you eat the bread, I mean, I know you've tried it, but it's very easily kind of absorbed and kind of masticated within your mouth.
Yeah.
And I guess just a tiny bit of water, you can see
yeah, it changed the whole form, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite... And it's so interesting. It's not chewy anymore, gummy. It's just kind of broke up the bread easily.
It's like the gluten has kind of gone from the bread a little bit.
But we will see when it comes out as a sauce form,
Yeah.
it's going to get again, going to back to its like a chewy, like gummy form, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm gonna eat this.
Shall I put this in the container, right?
Yes. And then we can add the garlic. I put a little bit salt in the garlic before I crush because it helps us to break it easily, like mashing. So this crushing with pestle and mortar is always better than grated it or chuck it in a food processor because you can taste the garlic and salt gives a little bit like not cooking effect, but it's kind of making it softer. So the garlic gives the whole flavor out basically.
And it's 120 grams of toasted almonds.
Yeah.
So we've already roasted these on the pan for like 4 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna weigh these.
Like toasting or roasting nuts gives a little bit like boosting its flavors always. It gives like nice nutty, like more nutty flavor to the. So people might find quite easier to make this in a food processor, I guess. It's quicker as well. But we did choose the kind of.
I think also because it reminds me too of like before there would have been something that would have operated this by a machine.
Yeah.
Everything would have had to be made by hand.
Exactly.
So you would have had to grind flour by hand.
Yeah, I mean, or milling the flour,
milling the flour.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's all like doing this action is always like meeting with your body form, like how it is actually moving. One of your works also was about that, right? If I'm not wrong.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny when I thought about your work. I immediately remember the moments that I spent in kitchens.
Oh, really?
Because like all you do is like using your like your body in harmony basically. It's not like kind of uncontrolled version. You just control it, but it's like really harmonically works what you are doing. At the moment, I guess.
Yeah.
And one of the best things, I think, best pose as well, I like kneading the dough or shaping it.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I think for me as well, you know, for kneading and shaping the dough is so much about, as you say, like being in harmony, and somehow being in rhythm with those ingredients and with those materials.
Yeah, that's true. In time, I'm preparing our tempura sauce. This recipe is Japanese and consists of plain flour and, salt and sparkling water because it gives like really nice, airy, fluffy texture to the vegetables or fishes when you deep fry it with this.
Yeah.
And it's vegan. While you're doing the tartar sauce, I'm gonna
You're going to fry this?
fry some fire, do the tempura quickly. It's going to be quite noisy.
And I'm just going to keep on making the sauce. So the almonds are already in here. They're crushed. So also in here is the Vida bread and 2 garlic cloves. And I'm going to add to it some malted vinegar. And it's 2 tablespoons.
Yeah, it's also a good match. Like we are using malted flour, malt vinegar.
Yeah.
They give a really nice dip flavor to this tartar, which is normally used like white bread.
Yeah.
It comes out like white sauce if it is not used like any nuts in there. But this is kind of dark, nice.
And a good squeeze of lemon, right?
Yeah. Citrus is good.
So just a little bit of olive oil and a tiny bit of water.
Delicious.
And some salt.
Yeah. And tiny bit of pepper. Great. A little bit oil while you're carry on, maybe. I'll check my tempura. Almost there.
I think it looks good.
Yeah.
I think.
Shall we try?
Yeah. Yeah?
Yeah.
So we're making the garnish now. So how much parsley do you need me to make?
Just like handful of chopped parsley. I'm not gonna put like much spice or anything for this garnish because our fish is already like flavored with lots of herbs,
Yeah.
samphire, and lovely aromatic flavors. So all we need is a little bit like sweet flavor from the red pepper, and then this smoky, smell of it because it's charred. And what we're gonna add is a little bit of toasted almonds that we did earlier. I just kind of
Do you need this?
spare for this. Thank you so much.
So I add this
I'm
to
just
here?
gonna chop it roughly. Yes, please. And it's gonna give a nice crunchy texture meet with the flavor of tarator itself because we use almond in that as well. And I think it's nice as a finishing touch. I think to mention what Veda means in Turkish and why actually we revisited this heritage as well. Like Veda as a name is actually Veda in Turkish means farewell. So it was actually very suiting the going back to like visit our heritage together, the word itself. So the fish is ready. Let's take it out and then just careful and start plating our dish. Let's have a look.
It's exciting.
It is. Look how juicy.
Smells really good.
So all the flavors are actually there. You can smell everything. Let's get a spatula maybe to lift it up. It's nice and thick. Lovely tomato sauce. Maybe you can add a little bit of samphire on top.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, why not? We can create like some nice dramatic. Yeah, nice. Even a little bit more. We got a lot of samphire, lovely. And it's nice and crispy, you see, like very airy. Put a little bit of our smoky almondy sauce around it. A little bit more. Let's be generous.
Oh, this looks great. Should we try? Should we?
Try.
Yeah. Let's try it.
There you go.
Thank you.
I want to start with the sauce actually a little bit. And a little bit of fish, some tempura as well. And you know, samphire is really salty. You don't need to add like much salt or anything extra. It's good.
It's good. It's really good.
Did you like it?
It's delicious. Thank you so much. And
Perfect.
yeah, thank you for creating a recipe with me and incorporating Trained on Vida.
It was so much fun for me too. Talking about our heritages and then how actually food brings us together.
Yep.
Hopefully we're gonna cook it together in the future.
Yep. We'll cook it again.
Yeah.
This is not our final Vida.
Not our final farewell.
What did it taste like?
It tastes so good. I suppose I've never eaten the Vida bread with anything else. It was quite exciting for me to kind of do a kind of alternative and really think about what it could be, because obviously bread can change into lots of other things. So how did you guys eat yours?
I had mine with, I toasted it with a bit of cashew nut butter on it, actually, and sliced banana.
Ooh, that's good. My dad is really into banana and Vida bread at the minute.
Yeah.
Marmite and hot butter, kind of, all melted and delicious.
So, Mel, we worked together on the video work Milling About, which was researching quernstones and the collection of quernstones in Hull at the Hull and East Riding Museum. And I suppose I was really interested in taking that as a starting point to build on research that I'd been doing within my practice around bread and bread making, but also how information is passed on from one person to another, particularly those things that are through doing. And I saw, quernstones as these things which are quite human in scale, but also they're very kind of, they require the body to really interact with them and to move in a certain way. We also worked with John Cruz, who is a UK quernstone expert.
Yeah, I mean, the Hull and East Riding Museum have this fabulous collection of querns right from the Neolithic onwards, when we first start farming and grinding grain for bread. But the Iron Age is famous because it's this turning point where we go from what we call the saddle quern, which is we have a top rubber and the bottom rubber, which I think was the gesture that Lucy was kind of mimicking very much in the film, to what we call rotary querns, where you're spinning the top wheel. As an archaeologist, we find these fragments of them, and John was really helpful in telling us, you rarely find these things whole when they've finished their life, whatever households or families they've been used by. They're broken up and fragmented, and they're often placed in very special deposits in pits or around roundhouses or ditches as part of the ceremony, in a way, of the ending of this deeply meaningful object that's been at the core of everyday life. But also, as an archaeologist, we're looking for the more ephemeral traces of that. And I've got my eye on the skeleton in the corner of Lucy's room, and I'm thinking about her body as a dancer, because what we see on the skeleton archaeologically is the wear and tear. And you talked about muscle memory, but in a way it's bone deep, because those muscles leave their attachments in the body in ways that can let us see that reiterative embodied work in certain members of the population. But also, when they swap over to this different technology, this rotary quern, you can then see whether they are dominant in their right or their left arm. And so it leaves its trace. This is a daily task, and these querns are something literally the body must fit around. You're kneeling by it, or you've got it between your thighs and you're kind of doing that work. And we know this is something that is probably going on alongside people chatting, sharing gossip. It's at the heart of daily life, and it's going to be a very important activity which actually symbolizes lots of things about fertility and feeding the family and the hearth and the home, and in its own way harks back to that wider landscape, the fields out there, and kind of the bringing in of the harvest. So these quernstones become these deeply meaningful, highly symbolic objects about fertility and productivity. And John was saying he feels quite deeply they might be associated with particular women's lives, and when they're at an end, the quern is ended too, and it's about the end of that productive life. So we find them, for example, there's a pair of burials of two men with weapons, and they have matching quernstones, almost as pillow stones, and they match. This is a pair of men who are probably related, and they have these querns under their head, and that might be about using the querns to evoke their power, their authority within the community, and the hope that fertility, those lives will be renewed. So they are such powerful yet such mundane objects.
Like Lucy, we've obviously worked together on Fold and Stretch site gallery. It was initiated because I was interested in understanding a way of how the body moves when you make bread. For me, that's why I find it so exciting to work with you as the main protagonist in milling about as well, because yeah, you kind of had that connection through also that, I suppose, some kind of muscle memory or knowledge that was brought from working with the dough and then back into this kind of like grinding flour or grain.
So maybe there's sort of a few things maybe that are going on, and one of them that strikes me in the conversation is about process or processes and observing movement in process. And if you look at sort of choreography, what, you know, one aspect or one particular perspective of choreography could be to observe process and then find a way to reorganize that or reposition that or find another perspective on it. And I think that's essentially what we were doing in the bakery. I suppose what was really interesting is this sense of how maybe time and history might connect to it. So for example, it made sense to me that then of course, yeah, I would almost travel back in time and have a sense or look at where the materials came from. So again, this sort of like frames of process piled upon each other, and also this idea of time and process is quite interesting, because again, this sense of taking something archaeological that exists in a kind of an ancient sort of practice, but also bringing it into a kind of present consciousness. And I think dance and movement and choreography are always working with that, actually. You know, our bodies, in a biological sense as well. I mean, our bodies move. That's what they do. They move and touch. The first things that we do when we're born, that is what we do. That's how we learn about the world. There was something, just as Melanie was talking though, that really struck me about this idea of, I suppose it was wear and tear, and the fact that the traces attach themselves to the bones and sort of last on the bones. And so, you know, I really have this sense that choreographers and dancers are really working with this idea of finding a way to attach your imagination to your bones, to the skeleton. And actually that's often not what we're working with, is how we articulate our perception, our imagination, our senses through our material. And you know, throughout a kind of contemporary dance practice, often our references, our reference point, our anatomical reference points are our bones. And also this idea of bones and stones as well. So with the milling, with the stones,
and for me, you know, the power of putting it in the museum was that you're surrounded there by dead things that have lost the bodies around them.
This notion of memory and how you bring memory. Rosemary Butcher always used to talk about memory in the present tense, and for some reason in the recent months, maybe because a lot of the time all we have is our memories right now. I mean, you know, because we're living in a lot more isolation, we're sort of delving back into the kind of memory bank a bit more, and sort of bringing those experiences back into the present, and sitting with them. But that sensation of, and I suppose memory feels like, or it's another element to these sort of ideas of information, or another form of embodiment, actually. The memory is often embodied deep in the body, you know.
So now it's just left for me to say a big thank you to my collaborators. Thanks Irem, Mel and Lucy for joining me in the kitchen, for taking the time and for sharing your knowledge. And thank you all for watching.